Hey, Kyle, can you hear us?
Yeah, I got you.
All right, let me turn you up a little bit. So did you work yesterday?
Yeah, I was in Lincoln Financial Field doing the Eagles San Francisco game.
Okay.
Yeah. Raining.
So I'm going to go through these questions that I sent and let you answer those. Let me turn my volume up a little bit. Okay. If you have problems hearing us, let me know. I've got a mic that's, it may not pick up everything. I'm just right in front of the camera. Sorry about that.
It's all good. I hear you guys very well.
Sharing a bit about your role as a camera operator.
So yeah, I'm a handheld camera operator, which means for football specifically, I hold a camera on my shoulder and I work one of the sidelines. Usually I'm on what we call the far side. So that would be opposite. If you're watching on TV, it would be the top part of the screen, far side bench. And that we call it far side because our near side is where the game cameras are, cameras 1, 2, and 3. And that's what is predominantly what you're watching when you watch a football game is those 3 cameras. So I run
where the announcers are too.
Yeah, our booth is on the same side as those cameras, and that's where the announcers are at. I work pretty much the opposite sideline and go from the end line to the end line. And my duties are to cover the action and basically go with the flow of the game as it goes. I pretty much play about 10 to 15 yards down the field. And then once they get into what we call the red zone, that's like the 30-yard line going towards their end zone. I go to the goal line to protect if there's a score, in case there's a replay need. There are a lot of plays that end up, for whatever reason, right there. So it's a place that's of good importance. And then once our camera cart that has 2 other cameras comes to the goal line, I go to the end line and protect the end line. So the carts, those are on wheels. Somebody's moving them. Yeah, there's 2 camera operators on a cart, and it's on a boom, and it booms up about 12 to 15 feet up. And then there's a driver that drives it according to where the camera operators want them. Make sure they don't run over anybody. Yes. Unfortunately, that has happened before. But well, we what we call a field cam. When we are recording videoing our football games, we've got 2 usually up top. And then we'll have one that we down on the field. We have a gimbal that we'll have out there and just handheld. And you just gave me an idea. When they get close to the red zone, we're usually trying to get ahead of the play a little bit. Yeah. But when they get down to the red zone, maybe we need to go outside the end zone and take that angle. Yeah, I mean, usually the angles, the ball's usually coming at you, so the better line of sight, more straight on you get is usually better coverage. So, yeah, I mean, but also on our show, we have, probably just under 50 cameras. So I was going to ask that. It's a little bit bigger show. And we do have a camera with a gimbal, too, which is, it seems to be becoming more and more common. Yeah. So who is your employer? Do you work for the NFL, ABC, Fox? So technically, I'm an independent contractor. I'm a freelance camera operator. I work predominantly for Fox Sports, but I also work for CBS, NBC. Basically, whoever is going to pay me my wage, I will work for. But predominantly, I would say about 90% of my work is for Fox Sports. Mostly NFL, or? I do NFL. I do college basketball, NBA, professional golf. I do the spring leagues like the USFL. I don't know if you've seen those, or XFL I've done. I do hockey, pretty much every sport I've done, and I do music time to time, some concerts, which is nice.
Cool. You had brought up another question I was going to ask. Oh, do you live in Florida? Is that right?
No, I live in New Jersey.
Jersey, okay.
Yeah, I live outside Philadelphia.
They fly you everywhere, or you try to stay close to home? Are you all over the country?
So for football, the way it works is I am giving a contract. They asked me to work pretty much the whole season. So I do a preseason game, 18 weeks of football, and then we do 4 weeks of playoffs. So usually the Fox has the contract through the NFC Championship game. So we do a wild card, divisional, NFC Championship game, and then every 3 years we do the Super Bowl. It'll be every 4 now because ABC is in the mix now. But basically they give me a contract. They say, hey, can you work? My schedule is basically for football is I leave Friday, work Saturday. We set all our gear up. We what we call a fax, which is basically making sure everything is working technically wise. And then Sunday we do the game. We strike everything. We put it in 3 54-foot trailers, semi-tractor trailers. And then they drive to wherever the next location is. We fly home, do whatever we do during the week, and then we just rinse and repeat. We're basically a traveling circus in some ways. But yeah, I basically submit flights through an app that Fox has, and they take care of all the travel in terms of hotel, flights, and rental cars. So that is nice. I don't have to expense anything or do anything like that. They take care of all that.
Speaking of, that's what Jenny's doing right now. That's why she couldn't join us.
Expenses?
Yeah, well, she's got a meeting with one of her bosses, so I'm recording it so I can show it to her later.
Gotcha. Well, tell her I say hello, please.
How did you start as a camera operator? Give us your journey of where you are, where you began, how you got here.
So my father did work in this business. So I'm not going to lie, I definitely had a foot in the door, but he got us. I didn't start working for the NFL until about 10, 11 years ago. I started when I was like 23. Well, I started even younger when he would get me regular little like runner gigs or PA gigs. I would help like the announcers out when I was like a teenager, get them stuff when they were working up in the booth. When I got my real start as a camera operator about 24, and I shot high school sports for 3 years. MSG, Madison Square Garden, had a channel where they broadcast all of New Jersey, New York, and some of Connecticut's high school sports. Like football is just like y'all in Texas. It's huge up in North Jersey. There's some very good schools, Don Bosco Prep and some other schools that have national recruiting. So they have a lot of coverage, and MSG basically made this channel to televise high school sports. So that's really where I cut my teeth, was doing that for about 3 years. And then from there, I got into doing like the Jumbotrons. So I worked at Madison Square Garden for their Jumbotron. I worked at MetLife Stadium at their Jumbotron. And while I was working there, I met some people that worked for the networks. And basically, I got a shot. My shot for working for Fox was a FDNY versus NYPD football game. And I did that like randomly. And the director really liked me, and he just happened to be the director who does the Super Bowl. So I got very lucky because I've worked for him for the last 12 years now. Cool. And done 4 Super Bowls with him. And so it's a lot of, I definitely had an advantage of like getting in, but once you get in, and it's really a lot of who you know and making those kind of connections of just putting yourself out there and meeting people, because you never know. This business is really weird in terms of it being a niche market. Not a lot of people work in live sports, especially. And, you know, people that I used to be my utility, running cable behind my, camera, getting me where I need to go, are now my bosses. So like, you never know who's going to go where and who's going to end up in a position of power. And it's just pays to be always respectful and a good person, because you never know who might be your boss one day.
Yeah.
So
ain't that the truth?
Yeah.
So you talked a little bit about the day before y'all go set up your cameras and everything. So you like a dry run, I guess, just to make sure everything's working, every camera, blah, blah. So let's say you've got a noon game on a Sunday. Mm-hmm. What time do you show up? And what time do you go home?
So for game days, usually we're in 6 to 7 hours before. We'll get there. We'll do another technical facts, make sure, again, everything's working. And then my day is pretty busy on Sunday. So we fax, then we have a sync test, which is basically we point all our cameras at one individual and he claps. And that basically syncs all of our cameras in to be the same time, so that for replay purposes, they have all of our feeds go back to New York City, and they have people watching the game in New York, officials, replay review people. So all that stuff needs to be integrated and working. So we do that. And then I have a camera meeting for about 30 to 45 minutes. Sometimes I'm there, sometimes I'm not, sometimes I'm doing player arrivals. So it's usually what I'm doing is like shooting, I'm sure you all see it, is, especially on NBA, not so much NFL, but it's like people care what people are wearing. I really don't care, but I have to shoot it. So we're doing that. And that's usually a couple hours. Then I go and have a security meeting on the field with the NFL, my manager, all the people that are working on the field, because it is a dangerous place. Like I said, you have that camera cart that runs back. On our show, like I said, we have 50 some cameras. So we have 2 camera carts on each sideline. So there's one on each. So that's going back and forth. You have people running around. It's kind of chaotic. So we really preach everyone being safe, not to mention that you have very large individuals running very fast and in full pads, like at you. So you don't want to get hit by them either. And then from there, I have to get with the talent. I work with Aaron Andrews and Tom Rinaldi. So from after that meeting, I'm pretty much with them because they have hits into our pregame show. They have, other segments that they're doing. So basically for the first 2 hours before kickoff, if it's a 12 o'clock kick, at 10 o'clock, I'm with talent until the game pretty much starts. We do a hit with them. And then the game goes, and I just go into my normal game flow. So pregame, and I know they do it after halftime. Aaron or somebody else, the sideline reporters, will catch the coach running off or coming back on. When they come back to do the interview, is that you that's shooting them? Yes. Anytime talent's on, it's one of our handheld operators. We have 2. Again, one works the near. I work the far usually. It would be us doing the interviews. And they basically do they talk to the coach before the game. They do an on camera where they talk about that. And then they'll have like maybe an on camera, like in between the first and second quarter, when they're talking about, all right, maybe someone got hurt or blah, 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 whatever it is that's happening during the game. And then again, like you said, they'll talk to the coach at halftime. When we come back from halftime, we'll do another on camera. And then at the end of the game, we'll do the interview with, the talent and the coach or player. So,
give me something exciting, memorable, something that maybe it wasn't even, maybe it was scary. Something that you remember that a game or two that sticks out in your mind from your experience.
I mean, I've been very fortunate to be at, I don't know if we have big sports fans, but I mean, I was at Tiger Woods' last Masters in 2019. I was covering that. That was probably one of the coolest things I've seen. Just because usually when you're covering sports, the crowd is like split, right? You have, when people are rooting, not everyone's rooting for the same person. Yeah. And in this particular instance, like everyone was rooting for Tiger Woods to win. So like I've never really been in an environment like that where you have the entire crowd is rooting for, one person. And the fact that, he did it how he did and, everything that happened was pretty, really cool. So I would say that's probably my top one, but I've also been to a couple 4 Super Bowls, the miracle at the Minnesota where, I don't know, Stephon Diggs caught the pass from, they beat the Saints. They walked off. I did that game. And then personally for me, probably the best one was the 2018 NFC Championship game where the Eagles beat the Vikings because I'm an Eagles fan. So that was really cool to be there. But yeah, I mean, I've done a lot. I mean, I could probably talk to you for an hour about some of the sports, but I've been fortunate to be at some really cool ones where, history was made. So
cool.
Yeah.
Anybody have any questions before I continue on? Are you, when you were in high school, were you a sports guy, football guy, or you just happened into this job just because you enjoyed it? I mean, did you have a class like AV?
No, like I said, my dad was a camera operator for NBC for 30 years. Like if you see any Michael Jordan footage, there's a good chance my father shot that because he used to do the NBA on NBC. And, he's the one who taught both my younger brother, Jack, works for Sunday Night Football. So he's also a camera operator. So we learned from him and, he was a camera operator until I was about 10, and then he started directing. So I didn't really, and then I didn't, because he did football, he covered football, he didn't let us play. And I'm a big guy, I'm 6'4", about 240 pounds. I could play football, but we never played it down in our life because he didn't like the violence of it. And that's fine by me because I have a son now and a daughter, and I probably wouldn't let him play football either because of just the stuff I've seen. It's just a very violent sport.
That's interesting.
I make a lot of money off of it, but I personally wouldn't let my kids, and I wasn't allowed either. Although I played soccer and I got broken bones doing that, so I guess it doesn't really matter. But no, I learned a lot of it from, again, just kind of being that PA utility role. My dad used to direct bull riding, the PBR.
Yeah.
So I got to learn a lot of stuff doing that because I would just go to shows and hang out and do different stuff. Like I would work in audio one weekend, and I would pick up a camera sometimes, and that's usually what I would follow through to. But I got a huge opportunity to just kind of grow up in the business. I didn't want to do it because my father wasn't around a lot. He would be gone for weeks at a time. But that was just how it was. I wanted to be a firefighter actually, and I was, but I started making a lot more money in television, and that just unfortunately makes things easier in life. So
Jenny said y'all just had recently had another kid?
Yeah, we had a baby boy in January. So he's almost a year old.
Yeah, I remember her saying something about you spending a lot more time at home recently.
Yeah, no, I only work football, really. I work weekends, and then my wife is a cardiologist. So she works at the hospital during the week. So I'm pretty much just hanging out with the kids. And that is the nice thing about this job. And the scary thing, too, is that I kind of can make my own schedule. You're self-employed technically. So it's a good thing and it's a bad thing because, if you want the time off, it's okay. But if you need to make money, you really have to work hard to build those relationships so that you can kind of get the same gig year after year after year. And then that's kind of how I build my work calendar, is that like, I know I have 20 some weeks of football. I usually do, another 10 weeks of spring football. So there's 30 weeks. And then I try to fill in the other, 15 or so, 20 or so with other sporadic things that happen. Like I do the NFL draft every year. I do the NFL combine, things that happen every year, the Masters,
training and Pro Bowl and stuff like that.
Exactly. But then again, sometimes the way that this business works is that contracts only last for so long. So you might work and do something and, NFL Network has been had this for the last 5 years. Well, now the NFL is doing it and they'll just bring in their own production team and their own people. And you're basically just up the creek without a paddle because nothing you could do.
I assume all the cameras and everything, you don't carry all that around, that's done for you?
No, that's like, I don't own any of my, I have my own cameras and stuff, but I'm not using that on a television broadcast. They have cameras that are state of the art. We use Sony 5500s. They're 8K capable, 1080i, ultra high definition. They're hundreds of thousands of dollars. Not anything I could afford or want to own because the technology is always changing. It doesn't change so much on our end. The biggest thing we've gone from was we went from triax cable to now we use fiber optic cable. It's a lot easier to transfer data. It's a lot more reliable. It's faster in communicating. I wouldn't own. It's hard owning gear because you have to work twice as hard now too, because now you have to sell yourself as an operator, as a camera operator, and you have to sell your gear, and stuff is always changing. So like you probably buy something and it's probably going to be outdated in a couple of years, which is the unfortunate thing.
Yeah, we're lucky. Our CTE department has a decent amount of money. So like our cameras at the stadium, we'll replace them every couple of years. And what we had, if it's even available anymore, the next year and the year after, it's definitely a lot cheaper. And it's just, they do something better every year.
Yeah, you know what I see a lot more now is this. I see this, and this is what's going to change our industry. I don't think it's going to be anytime soon, but the fact that like I used to do E&G a lot, which is like, it's basically I'm in charge of all the video, all the audio, how the video looks, the color temperature, everything, right? And now that camera that's extremely complicated, I just can pull out my phone and hit record and it does literally the same exact thing. So, cell phones have been around for what, 15, 20 years. I got to imagine that in 15, 20 years, it's going to be a lot different too, because they're already using cell phone systems to broadcast stuff. And it's not going to be, I mean, I'm sure it's already happening where there's going to be a whole production where it's just iPhones on a network and you're going to be able to switch and direct and cut. You just wear iPods or, AirPods and do a whole broadcast like that. It's not that far-fetched to think that that's going to happen.
No, every time they come out with a new phone, the camera is just, I mean, it's almost pointless to buy a camera nowadays.
It is because, I just got the 15 and they got the cinematic view. I mean, it's that Madden camera that came out a couple of years ago is all the rage. It's like the very shallow depth of field. It looks cinematic. I know the guy who basically created that look, and it was all the rage. Still is kind of all the rage because it's very cool looking and it's different. But that's going to become like he could basically do that on an iPhone now, and like what you said, just have a gimbal. And I just walk out there and like I don't have to carry this. Like the camera I'm holding is like almost 30 pounds. Like I already have back surgery because, it just beats you up. But like I could do this all day. That's no problem. And the fact that like it's wireless, I have a wire that's going on my cable. So, I'm running around $1 million athletes and I have to have two people behind me who have to be very good at what they do because they can't be tripping these athletes and hurting them. So like the fact that now like it could just be me out there, I don't need those two people. It's probably what's going to be happening.
And the fact that the wireless, the cell service has improved so much, and being able to send that over the wire through the satellite so much faster. Yeah,
we did a golf show a couple of years ago that was completely broadcasted over the 5G network, and it was the first of its kind, and it's just becoming more and more prevalent. And a lot of things are going to change. I mean, just how you watch sports. Hulu does it now. Amazon, Netflix is getting into it. So these companies that they're seeing how much like sports is basically a reality show, right? It's the ultimate reality show, and these bigger companies are realizing how much money is involved. So now they're getting involved, and you will see Amazon will probably take over. They will have a much bigger, just because they have the power. They have just all the resources and money. So like they're going to be involved a lot more. You'll see in the next few years.
How do you evaluate how you do? Do you go back and rewatch a whole game that you did? Do you have access of just your feed and how? Yeah,
I get emailed every week. I can go back and watch. Some weeks I watch if if I have a really good game and I have a lot of good replays, I'll go back and watch them. But most of the time, I mean, at this point, especially now having little kids, I don't have that. Like, even if I try to sit down and watch something, it's going to get interrupted. But yeah, I can go back and, also on my camera when I'm shooting, I have what we call returns. So my return is programmed. So that's what you're watching as a viewer. That's our actual broadcast. But my return 2 is the output of my tape machine. So when I'm shooting, there's a operator who's a replay operator that's watching the output of my camera. And they are the person that is recording and rewinding and playing the replay that you would see on TV. Okay. So I can watch that in my camera, and I can also talk to them. And if I mess up, I can say like, hey, get rid of that. Or I could say, hey, you missed this, like go back, 8 seconds. I had a reaction of CeeDee Lamb on the bench and, he smiled at me. And then they can cue that up, and then they sell that to a producer who is in charge of dictating what you're seeing replay wise. and if he or she likes it, they'll decide to go to my tape machine, which is purple, and they'll say, "Get ready, purple, roll purple," and then you'll see that replay, and then they'll cut to whatever they want to after that.
I would imagine there's the two different types of replays like that, where you're videoing something when the play is not going on, and they can access that at any time. And when you come back from commercials, sometimes they'll show little short highlight clips. Yep. But at the same time, there's got to be, I guess, a room full of people watching different feeds saying, this is the best view. We need to use this one right now because of a flag or injury or, whatever, a good play. It's got to be instant. Somebody's got to make that decision.
Yes. And I think there's 130 people on our crew. So it's not just camera operators, it's audio technicians, it's replay operators, engineers, truck drivers, production, where you have production managers, you have producers, you have broadcast assistants, you have graphics people, you have AI people now, you have augmented reality people. It's pretty crazy. We're the biggest show on Fox. So I think it is about like 130 people per week average. Sometimes we add more, or, for bigger games, we'll add more cameras, and, that requires another tape operator and stuff like that. But yeah, I have basically in terms of replay, every tape operator usually has about 2 feeds, and they are watching either one. And, each camera has an assignment. So it's pretty, specific to what each person is doing. And like I said, you have 50 some cameras, but basically they're just, if football, they're just covering everything they can. So like, when you see some random guy like catch the ball and it's him the entire time, you're like, well, how do they know he was going to catch the ball? Well, he shoots him the entire time. That's what they call an ISO. They just isolate that person, and when the ball goes to them, they have the look that they need. But when you have smaller shows, you don't have that luxury. So then it becomes entirely harder, because now you have to cover all these different situations and scenarios with less. And that's where our show is nice, where it's just like, usually people have 1 or 2 things to do, and that's it. And you just kind of, as the situation of the game changes, you'll have a scenario and a list of what to do in that, that certain situation. And then you just follow that. And as long as everything is, as long as everyone's doing what they should be, you shouldn't have any issues in terms of your basic coverage.
Gotcha. All right. Before I ask you this last question and open it up again to them, we got about 5 more minutes. Yeah. You doing the Cowboys-Eagles game next week?
No, that'll be on NBC. My brother will be there. Yeah.
So if any of these guys, gals, wanted to get involved with any of it, right, from camera operators to all those things that you mentioned that are involved in the production of a professional event, be it football or whatever, what do you think is their best avenue?
The young people I see right now that are working a lot of these NFL games have the best success by just straight up emailing the teams. Social media obviously is a huge presence now. It's becoming more and more prevalent, where they used to kind of get pushed to the side. Now the league has really kind of, accepted it, except for, I don't know if you saw the one operator that they just banned and got rid of. I don't know what that's about, but yeah, you can literally email their email addresses are on their websites. Reach out to them, because you never know. A lot of these positions have like high turnover, so they'll have people kind of come in And if it works out, they'll usually promote you into something else. That's a good point of starting, is just reaching out to the organizations themselves, because they all have their own social media teams. They all have their own videography teams, audio teams. That the content creation is huge right now. So you can't just make it out of nothing. So there are a lot of jobs in that specifically. And then in terms of sports TV, it's again, you kind of reach out to people who work for the networks. And that's how I got my shot. I mean, I worked for the in-house of like the Jumbotron feeds, and that's a good starting point too. Is just, usually people aren't working there all their lives. Usually it's a good starting point, and then you go on to something else. So again, there's spots that open up in those kinds of positions. It's tough getting into doing at the professional level, only because there's nowhere else really to go. The only really positions that pay more than doing pro sports are entertainment positions, and that's like music and like traveling with like big bands, like with the Jonas Brothers or stuff like that. The technicians that work on those shows make very good money, and therefore those spots don't open up very often. Yeah. So once you kind of get to that level, predominantly the people that I work with are in their mid 50s. And it's because directors and producers, once they trust you, they're just going to use you all the time, because it's one less thing that they have to worry about. They don't have to really direct you, like, what you're doing. So that just makes their job easier. They can focus on the people that they don't work with week to week and actually have to direct them. Right. So, but again, it's really just putting yourself out there and networking, just talking to people, introducing yourself. And, if you never ask the question, the answer will always be no. Right. So,
if any of y'all ever have any inclination to do this, I got a guy's email that I can give you.
Yeah, absolutely.
He can get you in touch with somebody that you need to talk to. Any questions before we let him go? Oh, okay. If you want to, they want to know, feel free to ignore it. How good of a pay rate is it?
So I'm a union member. So what I do for Fox is all through a union. So I'm involved in negotiations as well, and it's good money. It's definitely a livable wage. I make well over 70 an hour, and it's on 10-hour days. Overtime over 40 hours. We get per diem, we get health benefits. So it's definitely good. And even, lower tier jobs, because it's union, it's still a very good wage. I don't think there's many people that are making under $40 an hour on our crew. So, but then again, it's not full time. So I'm not making that every day. Yeah. So it's, that's also the drawback. Like, it's not a full-time job where, I get 50 some weeks of that. It'd be nice, but it's not. So that's the kind of thing where you have to learn, where you just, once you kind of get into it, you want to get the gigs that are lengthy, and you just kind of go from gig to gig and make as much money as you can, because you never know when it might not be back.